Manawa mai te Māori nuku, manawa mai te Māori rangi. Ko te Māori ki au, he Māori tipua. Ka pākaru mai te pau, humie, huie, takie. Right, well, I can't say morena, but good morning. Hello to you all, kia ora, and welcome to our April iPEN webinar. And we've got someone who's rapidly becoming one of our close friends, a close iPEN friend, Dion, who's going to be sharing just some like super practical ways that he has been just nudging, in some cases in little ways, and in other cases sort of those bigger ways, the way that ripples tend to go, how he's been trying to support creating as much impact from his own work as possible. And I really hope that at the end of today's session, what you all take away is just the reminder that a lot of this isn't rocket science. It really is just thinking a little bit more purposefully at a few strategic points in time. But with that introduction, I'll hand over to you, Dion, to introduce yourself. And thanks again. Great to have you here. Thanks for your thanks on behalf of everyone for sharing.
Okay. Kia ora, ko Dion Mundi aho, and yes, I'm going to share some ideas and thoughts about forging a pathway for impact and my experience with the people that I've been working with in various teams. Been attending the iPEN's workshops about impact for some time, and I just wanted to share some of the insights and ideas, looking at some of what we've been doing with the impact lens as we look at things. And so I was going to start with a reminder that if we're looking at impact pathways, there may be different audiences and we might need different packaging. So policy, the example I'm going to give, there are policy changes nationally, internationally about agrochemicals and land use. So they have an influence on the work that we're doing, and hopefully the work that we're doing may inform some of that policy. And we also have practices, wine industry practices that we'd like to reflect in our work, but also possibly influence going forward. And so we'll be looking at some practices. There's also the public. We take for granted social license to do some of the work that we do, particularly when we work with industries, and that needs to be supported by good science that's communicated well. And we want the public to trust the science that we're doing and have trust in the robustness of what we're doing, and that we're doing it for public good benefit. So that's important in our communication and in some of the outputs if we want to go down that pathway of impact. And then there's people, there's the authors, the people involved in the science. While we do it because we love it, we also want to see some benefit for our careers, for our ability to encourage other people into what we do as a science. So I just want to start by saying that how we package things and how we take the work can lead it towards different impacts, and we may need to repackage some things to get certain impacts. So let's start with an example. We had a review of cultural practices of botrytis bunch rot management in New Zealand vineyards. And this was actually Phil Almer led this project. It was an invited keynote talk at a conference in France. And that package of work that we're bringing together for that one invite, for that the four of us as authors, we had an ability to take that base package and nudge it in different ways and have different possible impacts come out because of which way we nudged it. And just simple things you can see in this cover slide here. There's a bunch of rotting grapes. But when you introduce it by saying, this is the status quo and this is what we'd like to achieve, those images can start to set the scene if you're talking to growers or talking to researchers of a possible endpoint. And so much of what we're doing with trying to create impact is steer people towards an endpoint that we're not quite there yet. So we can make that visual in what we're doing as well. So one of the other things that I'm interested in, I'm a data steward at Plant and Food Research, and we've been talking a lot about making our information fair, findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. Now, when we started this initial idea of doing this keynote talk, we wanted to make our data or our information, our story about botrytis usable by people, by the public, industry, practices we might have wanted to have change because of it. We wanted to have it there as a reference point for policymakers. Now, I don't know about everyone else, but a lot of the things I've done in the last 24 years are not that findable. They're definitely not that accessible. I have trouble sometimes going back to some of the old files and working out what they were, and they're not always reusable for other people. So these things can be quite a distant idea. And because I'm a clumper and quite visual, please bear with me, I'm going to work through some of these with some visualizations of what we did with our information to try and make it fair, so that what we've done can be reused. I had some motivation. My three co-authors are near or at an age where they could retire, and I didn't want their expertise and their knowledge to no longer be available to myself and to others, either in the industry, in science, or for those policymakers. So lots of information we had, some of it wasn't published, and it's come from a range of different projects over time. I've been here 24 years, and I don't think there's a season when I haven't done some botrytis research. So there was one theme, but many different projects, and there'd never been an opportunity to bring them all together before. Now, I don't expect you to be able to read all of this, but hopefully some of you that have done the workshops will recognize these charts. And all I've done here is I've used this chart to try and communicate mainly with our funder. We want to do some more work. I had an opportunity to apply to NMIT, Nelson Marlborough Institute of Technology, for some travel funding, some to do some botrytis work and some to do some trunk disease work. And I looked at what outcomes would NMIT want and work back from that. If they wanted to have some botrytis research in a format that was useful for them, would help their reputation, what would be the steps? What outputs would we have to create so that there was a possibility of those outcomes? And then presented that in a format so that they could see how investing in the research funding for me to travel and collaborate with my other authors would be a benefit to them. Of course, it was going to be a benefit to me as well. That's why we put it up there. It can also be really useful to have these kind of charts if there's a turnover of staff or new people come in, so you can bring them up to speed, and also to check, go back and do your reviewing. Did we get there? Did we at least, get to the outcomes, and can we see, are we heading to those, or did we get the outputs out and are the outcomes starting to form, or do we need to do a little bit more nudging or a little bit of repackaging to, or think of another way to move things towards those outcomes, have that other conversation with someone, or make sure that people are aware of what's been happening. So a lot of that comes down to communication. And the thing I'd say about communication is make it easy to be helped. In the CRIs especially, we have comms teams. Make it easy for those people to help us. Use that in-house training, those in-house skills that are there, I don't have to be an expert at social media as long as we have someone that is, and I make sure they have the right information. Give them lots of lead time. It may seem strange, but the people in the communications department aren't just sitting there waiting for tomorrow's release from you about what you spent the last 10 years doing. They'd like to know a little bit ahead. They have work schedules as well. They may have suggestions of things that would help the timing of putting it out there. Use bullet points. I might be highly invested in botrytis research, but communicating to the communications people and then to the media and the wider audience, they want to know why, they want to know what, they want to know who and how, and bullet points. If you can't sum it up in nice, short, sharp sentences, it's going to get lost. So use those bullet points to really, what is the key part of your message? Having prepared visuals makes life so much easier. And I'll give some more examples of that. And make it easy to be found. If you put out a media release and you've got your name on it, attach the company website or somewhere where there's something about you. The media, if they don't know you, actually wants to check out and see if you're a worthwhile source, if you've got something interesting about you, how might they use you to sell their story, to pitch it to their publisher or their editor or whoever makes those decisions about whether they run with that work that they've invested time and energy in. And so it's really important, as well as making yourself be found, that you invest in some relationships. And here's just a few that are relevant to this project. Phil Alma is one of my colleagues. He was the one that was invited to speak in France. And he sparked the whole idea of bringing together all this work that we've done over the years. And the funding that I sought was to go and spend a week with Phil, actually in Hamilton, working on a paper, the conference presentation, and just bringing together those things that we've talked about on and off for a while, but spending a week in one place together is so much different to trying to do everything online. We have Donna there, our visual communications person, who is just wonderful, and Donna does great things and takes, as she puts it, my scribble on the page and turns it into something really useful. So she's done that a number of times, and there's some visuals coming up that Donna's done. Sarah Evans was the communications person, coordinator of press releases and other media to do with this project when we put it up. And I had regular conversations with Sarah coming up to the event. It wasn't a shock that, oh, look, we've done this overseas talk. Now we've got a paper coming. Oh, following from that paper, we have this and we have this and we have this. And so she was able to say, well, for this one, have you considered going here? Or who's your target here? Can we look at it and just finesse this a little bit so that it's easier for you? And then Sophie's the editor and journalist for one of the local wine magazines. Now, the interesting thing there with that relationship is we sent out the press release about the botrytis work, and she said, well, actually, it's the wrong time for our journal at the moment. However, thank you for reminding me that you're doing this work. I need an opinion piece on trunk disease. I know you work on that as well. Can we do that this month? And we'll come back to the botrytis later. So sometimes with these relationships, because you've got them, they know that you've got research that's worth talking about, but it may not be the right season for the research that you're telling them about now to fit with the media that they have. And I think that's really important. If you've got a relationship with someone, you don't feel rejected because your press release didn't end up as an article, because that relationship led to some other work that's equally vital for your career and for getting that information out there. So I've clicked on the wrong thing. There we go. So here is one of Donna's lovely diagrams that summarizes our 20-page paper, which happens to be at that address and is open access. And this is what we used when we gave a talk to Chile. Now, following on from the conference keynote, Phil was invited to not travel to Chile, but give an online presentation. And when you're giving a presentation that's been interpreted, it's always nice to have nice, clear visuals and also some reference material that they can go back to and read later if they want more information. Now, it was a bit of a stretch to do this presentation because the sound check was at 5:30 a.m. New Zealand time to fit in with Chile, but we managed it. It was a lot easier than having to travel there and back. But as well as having the visuals and the paper to refer back to, for this communication of our science to a group of scientists and growers, we also had a really important other visual clue, and it was a video clip. Now I'm going to play this, and you shouldn't get any sound because I've deliberately turned that off. So what we did was when we were doing the science, we actually went out there and we took photos. It does have sound. If you want to hear a harvester going through, it's there. And I took this on my iPhone in landscape, and I took lots of B-roll. There's lots of, the different tractor went down, lots of rows, and then lots of pictures of what we're actually doing. We were shaking the living daylights out of grapevines with a harvester in January to get an effect in April. And the important thing for botrytis is all the little dotty bits in the bottom. And for the growers, that there's not too many bunches in the trays, because lots of bunches in the tray would mean you're knocking lots of fruit off and they lose crop. But all those little bits in the bottom there are trash that causes botrytis. And here we've got also some tendrils to show that the vine actually is slightly changed by running the harvester down. I can't emphasize enough, if you want to communicate your science later on, when you're doing it, get photos, get video. You can't have too much. Do it landscape. Turn the phone around, take it landscape. And if it's not you, you're not good at it, or you're actually too busy doing the science, get someone else to help. Get lots of that B-roll there, particularly if it's methodologies. If there's something long and boring to explain in a conference presentation about how you got your botrytis out of the bunches or something like that, get some video, edit it down. It makes it so much more fun, so much more interesting. It catches that attention, particularly if you've got an audience where English is their second language. Pictures can do the work for you. Oh, let's not watch it again. Now, this is one that I had to be nudged a little bit. As I said, I'm not the greatest social media person. However, Plant and Food provides us with a company website. So before the first press release for our botrytis work went out, I actually made sure that my company website was up to date and was linked to my LinkedIn and was linked to my ResearchGate. And on the ResearchGate, when the paper came out, I used the function to highlight and make that article more visible and got more reads and got more content reads, more people visiting to find out. It's really important that you make sure that with your different media here that they do link to each other, that the links work, that you click on them and they go to each other, and it's up to date and it's consistent. I'd say that Dion Mundy is a fairly rare name, and it does make it a little easier than John Smith to make sure you are the right person. But there is a Dion Mundy somewhere that does work on lizards in Australia, and occasionally I'll get requests to go to a conference and present about lizards. I haven't found one in a place I want to go to yet, so I haven't accepted any of those. Make sure that you can be found. If you've got little video clips or something that media can have a look at and see what you like to present, or even conference people, if they can see what your presentations are like, what your science is like, what maybe some fact sheets or something like that. If they're all linked in there, they can see what you can communicate, how you might be suitable for an audience that you might want to present to and they might want you to present to. And knowing your audience is important. We have another avenue here that we have available to us. VineFacts is something that Plant and Food does here in Marlborough for the whole New Zealand wine industry. My colleague Rob Agnew and Victoria Raw as well, but Rob was one of our co-authors in this paper. They're responsible for the content. And there's little snippets and things about research that go into VineFacts and go out to the whole wider wine industry. So if we can think of ways that we can help people like Rob put content into VineFacts, that helps us communicate to the wider industry, but it also helps them meet their requirements to make things interesting and diverse in one of their jobs. And that different packaging of the information, if we're sending it to a grower and they're getting it here, then they're asking those same questions. Why is this important to me? Is my wine company going to make me change? What is it that's going to change? Do I need to make more tractor passes, or do I need more staff? What is the effect for me? Who are these people that are telling me this, and are they trying to sell me something? You know, how many grains of salt do I need to take with the information that they're providing? And how do I make this work for my vineyard? It might be all fine and great if they do it in Marlborough, but will it be applicable in Central Otago, or will it be applicable in Gisborne, or in the little microclimate that I sit in? So we need to package what we present to the growers in VineFacts in a short summary article. We might be able to refer them to somewhere else, but we need to cover that why, what, who, and how. And the same for a different audience. When we finished our work before Christmas, we did an iPEN article, a whole of plant and food, and making the most of invites. We'd had 3 or 4 invites that all lined up that allowed us to do this body of work. And we talked about how working smarter, using that base article, that base bit of information, and just repackaging it subtly for the different audiences allowed us to fulfill all of those invites and achieve different goals. Personally, I find it really hard to do self-promotion, but it's always good to share your team's success with the rest of the company. And so if we're talking about the success we've had as a team, it's a lot easier than just saying, hey, look, this is what I've been doing. And we package it differently. We don't assume that everyone is a grape or a botrytis expert. So you need to choose your wording differently. But if someone wants to read more, you can have the link there and they can go and find out. We can also take what we've learnt in this project and apply it somewhere else. So this is a life cycle for botrytis in grapes. And we've learnt a lot of lessons. There's all this work that we've done at the different growth stages of things that you can control or things that might be happening. Now we've taken this life cycle and we've compared and contrasted it with apples and some work that we're doing on integrating apple disease management and cultural controls for that. And last week I was talking to some macadamia nut growers, and we can take this and say, well, you don't have the berry part, but the flowering, you actually have botrytis infection. So what can we learn from our other crops where we look at flowering infections of botrytis, overwintering, what can we do for your crop? And aren't you lucky you don't have this, and this problem that the grapes have? Because everyone likes to know that they have less problems than somebody else. So we can reuse that learning, reuse that image, compare and contrast it for different industries. Or we can take the image, we can flatten it out, as we have on my left-hand side here, the big one under botrytis control options, and we can write a technical article. Again, we've been invited to, after writing the paper, to put into an international technical journal a 2-page summary for growers, for industry people, a bespoke botrytis bunch rot management plan, where they can take the information from our 20-page review and turn it into we have to turn it into a 2-page technical paper that lets growers say, look, here are some tools. I might be using A, B, and C. Do I add D and E, or do I actually swap to F, J, and K? What's working for me? What are the pluses and minuses of each of these? How would I make this work for me? The nice thing about the technical journal, their papers are open access. They're translated into 7 languages. And so if we put the work in to repackage and refer back to our 20-page technical review or 20-page journal paper, then we'll get really good wine industry coverage with this application of our information into a technical format. So it's worth that effort, and it is effort, to take all that information and crunch it right down and change the wording. And you may need to bring some expertise in. In Plant and Food, we're really lucky. We've got an excellent publication unit that can help us make sure that our wording is right for our technical audience, whoever that may be it client report or wine industry technical people, science, presentations, whatever, but making sure that the wording is right, that we've got the right tone, that we are communicating, we're not assuming things that we shouldn't, leaving out big chunks that need to be there to explain things. And they're really good at picking up my spelling mistakes as well, so that's all good. So back to one of these Gantt charts. This one's a bit different to how we're taught when we do the iPEN sessions. I had some big outcomes, things that I wanted to do, both short term and long term. And I sort of worked backwards. I looked at some of the critical issues, such as, a lot of stuff was only in client reports. I knew these key staff that were getting near retirement age, wanted to have some of our New Zealand work more internationally known and have a reputation for it. And the desire to see also an industry awareness of some of that past research that may not be well disseminated because it's been in a client report, or staff have changed and turned over, or they've just forgotten that that was a practice that was used in the past and can still be used in a season when there's more disease pressure or when we're looking at a lower carbon economy. And then the middle bits I've sort of filled in as the opportunities have arisen. There's been no one program or project. So basically, as something's come up and there's been an opportunity, I've sort of said, does it have a possibility of an output that leads towards the outcomes that we want? Pop it in here. That's a way of recording it. Yes, we've done the science paper. We've got the opportunity to do the technical paper. We've got the in-house newsletters done, the talk to Chile, this talk. Right. What do I need to do before that out could be, and work back? But keeping an eye, is it adding to our end goal? And the thing that I'd say here is the sense checking is good. Having a record. So when you have that conversation with your line manager, oh yeah, this year we did this, this, and this, and oh, I've done a few more things towards that long-term goal. Now it's not complete. Impacts happen after projects. Sometimes a long time after projects. I noticed on ResearchGate this week that a project that I finished 20 years ago is still the most read output that I've had this week. Hopefully the mulching work is helping people now that we did 20 years ago. But here's a way, again, of communicating what I've been doing, how things have changed. I've updated the date for this version up the top there. I'll just keep it running in the background and pop another couple of things in when we get a few more things done. If we see some of those long-term outcomes happening, we tick next to them. I might put a date or a link to where the evidence of that is, so that the next time we're designing a project, we can say, well, this is the impact we've had in the past from our past work. This was the time it took before those impacts were realised. So I found that the chart's quite useful for me, as a record, as reviewing, as communication. As I said, they don't always look just like they did when we had our lessons, but hey, that's me and how I work. So impact pathways and packaging policy. If I want to change the wine industry policy on some of the botrytis management, we still need to do some repackaging of some of our for that outcome, because we haven't always presented in the right way for that. But I think if we do that technical paper for the international audience, we can refer back to that and say, you know, these recommendations have been made to industry. There's the opportunity for this. The practices, the things we actually have done with the industry, that technical review invitation shows that our practices are being noticed. We've had popular articles. We've had content for teaching. When we've had guest lectures at universities and polytechs, we can present, this is what has happened in New Zealand and this is why it's of interest internationally. And this new project work in apples is taking the same approach but in a different crop, applying a range of different methods in an integrated way to get some disease control. The public, we've had invitations to growers to give articles, to do interviews. We've had open days and events. This is a public event giving this talk. Taking those opportunities, packaging up the information. If you've already got 5 slides in the slide deck, when you say, yes, I'll give a talk, it's a lot easier than if you're starting from scratch. You might edit them or use them differently, but they're there. That's that starting point. Using those visuals that Donna has supplied, running that little bit of video that you took. And the people. We got a conference keynote talk that was great for Phil and for the rest of us. The review paper itself, we've had lots of inquiries when that was published from our scientific colleagues. We had that invitation to speak to the Chileans, and we've had that in-house newsletter that's also generated a lot of interest in the work that we were doing and have done. So I'd say, if you want to make ripples of impact, take the opportunities, have some long-term goals. Your pathways may not be linear. They may not all line up at once. You might, put things on hold for a wee while and then come back to them when the time is right. Not every activity will bear fruit in the season that you're in, but that doesn't mean that it won't fruit next year. And not every activity that you're a part of will be part of a project. So don't just put everything in a drawer at the end of the project and file it away. Just think, oh, actually, how might I reuse that? Or how might we apply that to what we're doing now? Or that person's asking about something that we did a few years ago. Have I got something there that can help them? So yeah, thank you. I hope that I haven't been teaching anyone to suck eggs, and that that was useful and presents a little bit of just how I've been looking at the impact that we're making with different audiences, based on what we've been doing in the different iPENs workshops, which I highly recommend to anyone that hasn't done them yet. Just get in there and have a go and have a practice, and they're lovely people and they'll help you lots.
And to shamelessly grab onto that promotional opportunity, Dion, we're just the next round of workshops is this month just coming. So if you do want to register for any, get in touch with Chanel or me, or and we can point you in the right direction and get you sorted out. But thanks, Dion. That was really cool. And what I I mean, I sort of hinted at it at the start, but what I really like about your approach and what you've shown is like it doesn't have to be a really great big deal. You know, a lot of the examples that you were talking about were just seeing small opportunities and yeah, I suppose a wee bit like Lego, like you can just build things together, and those things become other things. So it's kind of having the experience and then sort of the nose to sort of get better and better at sort of sniffing out or seeing the opportunities when they come. And that repackaging point I think is really important. Um, and sometimes I think one of the issues that I've got much better at like not kind of getting tripped up in this, but you know, with all the science training and things, it's like it has to be new knowledge. So it's like, well, once I've done the paper, well, then, you know, now I have to think of something brand new. But actually, when we're talking about impact, it's about getting that out there. And so that repackaging process is completely legitimate and actually the totally appropriate way to go. Yeah.
And yeah, sometimes it's better to be interviewed by the journalist or the editor, and yes, your name mightn't be on it, but that might have more impact than
Yeah.
what you've written because they are asking the questions that they know their audience wants the answers to.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So would love we really welcome any questions from anyone. So please you can either put your hand up, you can take yourself put your video on. If you've got any questions, or pop them in the chat. Um, but as a starter, Dion,
Yes.
I always like to ask the question about, you know, if you could go back and give yourself some advice, you know, if you could hop in the time machine 15 or 20 years, would you, you know, based on what you kind of know now about sort of maximizing the impact from your work, what would you say, Dion, let go of that or do more of this? Yeah, what changes and advice would you have given yourself?
I had the opportunity to do the media training. PFR sent me away on that, and I sort of wish I'd done that earlier because I
Mm,
think I would have. There's nothing like hearing it from the media's point of view about what they're looking for, what they need to take to their editor to pitch to get it published or you know
mm,
possibly get it on TV. If that's the case, they need visuals. They need to see what you've done. They've got to have those
yeah,
video clips. That
yeah,
was a fairly intense 2 days. And then I did a lunchtime during lockdown course on using your phone to make little video clips and editing them. So you've got those little science snippets.
yeah,
Um, I still get people in PFR that are much better than me to do the professional ones.
yeah.
But if given the choice of having no video or my video, I'll collect
Mm.
my video and we'll do better if we get the chance.
Yeah, and actually that just on that, I know about the importance of those visuals, but often if you're the person who's doing the talking or organizing the thing or running the field day, reminding yourself to actually have someone in the team with an allocated responsibility to be the photo or the video taker um, is essential. It's a little bit like trying to get like remembering to ask someone to take minutes in a meeting because you can't run a meeting and take minutes and facilitate. You know, you really can't. And so I still routinely go, oh damn, we didn't get any photos of this workshop or this thing that we did. And yeah, so that would be I would just totally reinforce that point.
And
Yeah,
if you're a bit shy and you don't want to be the one in the photo, train up to be the one taking the photo and the video and get good at it because then you
yeah,
won't be in it, but you'll still
yeah.
be contributing.
Yeah, yeah. The other thing, actually, when you were talking about the media training, I think what you gave a really good example of when you're taking those visuals and then turning it into that kind of almost like that decision matrix for the industry journal about, okay, well, if it's at what stage am I at and what options do I have, and I forget that article, sort of the journal, that monthly journal that your colleagues look after. What you were talking about there was really anticipating the questions that the audience is going to have, like imagining if I was this type of grower or that type of grower, because there isn't just one type of wine grower, there's lots of them. So there's quite a lot of drilling down in layers and layers. And so I just think that was great example of how it's not that, oh, we'll just write the one thing and then just hand it out like flyers. That it just doesn't work because it's not speaking to the audience.
And that could be great to brainstorm it with either the person that's producing that or one of your communications people and say, look, we've got this information. Who might the audience be? What would they be interested in? What do they need to know? Where do we point them if there's other stuff that they want to know? Because, we've only got 2 paragraphs here, not many pages.
Yeah. Yeah. Can I, and please, anyone, if you've got any questions, go for it. But I also want to endorse your creative use of the program logic template, because anyone who's been to the iPEN workshops will know that we really reinforce the point that they are tools, and tools are only useful if they are actually being used and proving to be useful for you. So they're meant to be a little bit, they're meant to support adaptation. And so again, I think you did a really lovely, really good example of how you took a template and now you're using it sort of for a few different purposes as a bit of a tracking tool, and as you said, the snapshot tool. Did you what did it when you were sort of first exposed to those as sort of a thinking and a project management and maybe a comms tool, did it make you start to think about things in a slightly different way? Like what sort of transformation, if any, did you experience?
The boxes are small, so you've got to put some keywords. I can't put big, long paragraphs in them. So I've actually got to think what's key to put in there. What is the person wanting to see? What's going to grab them? What's going to communicate to them? Am I using the right language? Have I got too technical? Those sorts of questions.
Yeah. And actually, I think I saw, Matthew, you've got your hand up, so I'll go to you in a second. Just to that language point, you can see the 2 different ones that you used. Your audiences were different, so you were using different. They felt different. The second one was much more just as a tool for you, so it was a little bit more casual, but that's fine because that's all that you need for your casual, not in the pejorative sense, but you know what I mean. Whereas the other one was much more focused on what was around supporting the funding application. So and the value and the benefits that were going to be accruing, to the organisation around the, support for the course and things. So just, again, a really good example of where,
And shamelessly, I read their funding application and I pulled all the buzzwords out that they had in their application and made sure they were in the in the program logic, because it's using the vocabulary that is attached to the end use. Read the question and answer the question. I believe I was told at school.
All right, Matthew, you had a question.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Dion. That was great, really enjoyable talk and some useful tips. You mentioned the lag. So, you've got projects that happen and then projects stop, and there's a time before impact might happen. I wonder if you've got any reflections or challenges on funding your time to make that impact. Because if you don't have a project to charge it to, some people get a bit twitchy.
Yeah, but if you've got 2/3 of the slides, or you've got 2/3 of the talk, or whatever there, you can apply for some funding to finish it, or you may be able to make a case. Look, if I finish this work and we do this output, I'm a step closer to this next funding application that we need. This is a step towards my goal and your goal of getting, because this is what's next. And that's what we did with, we were invited to do the keynote talk. And for a lot of people, we'd contribute to the keynote talk, and that was it. We got the funding so we could write the paper, but we were also invited to present a paper to the Plants Journal. We got the funding to pay for that being open access. That opened some more doors. And there have been little bits of funding in that there, but it's been at a time when I haven't had new big projects starting. So I've had the time to chase some of those, and other things are opening up. This Apple work has come about because people have been reminded, people have been aware of the work that we've done in grapes, and they've gone, oh, well, that doesn't sound too different to what we're doing. Sometimes when you're 110% funded is the hardest time to continue to do this. But sleeping's overrated. You can always find time for something that you're passionate about. Yeah.
And it's a little bit, I mean, I think, Adi, on the other thing that you're kind of highlighting is, a lot of this is just doing little bit, it's like, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? Like, it's not this big shabam. It's lots of little things that all, and that's why we're talking about ripples, right? It's a kind of the chaos theory in action. And just the more little things that you're chucking out there, it will build and go into some sort of surprising directions, and that's good too.
But it's also making use, I mean, there's 1,000 people in plant and food. So I don't have to be the expert in comms or the publication unit, or talk to people and say, look, I've got this idea, can you help me? And they may say yes or no, or have you considered, or do you know about? And it may be that you leave something with someone for a while and you check back in and say, great, what do we need to move this forward? Let's get this out there. That will lead to something else, and prioritizing some things. When it came apparent that we were going to do some Apple work, then some things got sped up and others are still sitting in the back burner. I will get on to doing that technical article soon-ish, maybe next month.
And I think, Dion, you obviously, you applied for the funding for some specific investment of time in relationships, but you're also talking about, again, that incremental investment in relationships and just maintaining them with colleagues. And you never, a lot of that we're doing just because we just sort of know that keeping connected with those people is going to be of benefit for you at some point, but is also likely to be of benefit to them in some way. And you don't always know how, but you can sense that those connections and networks, it's a little bit, I often think about brains and, the propagation of things down neurons, and it's all those connections. The more connected you are, things will make, those signals will get to where they need to go faster. Yeah.
And not that I'm planning of going out and winning lotto or anything this week and not coming back to work tomorrow, but I'd like to think that the work that I've done is available, that those FAIR principles, someone else may use it. We've had examples this year of people wanting to look at some of our past botrytis work and do some modelling in an area that we never considered that work might be used for. and I'm hunting through trying to find actually which projects that work was done in and where the data sets are and things like that. So when I do that, when I've dug that out, I'm going to make sure that it's registered in our company, has a place, the name of which has just gone straight out of my head at the moment, where we can actually list these data sets are here, this is what they are, here's the annotation around them, so they can be reused again and again for different purposes.
Yeah.
And so that, you know, that work isn't lost. I once did some grass scrub work on young grapevines, and we published it, and someone said, oh yeah, we found that 10 years ago in Hawke's Bay when we had greenfield plantings. And it's like, well, no one ever published it, so we didn't know that. We had to go through 3 years of finding out for ourselves that that was the case. Yeah.
Goodness. Yeah. And what a simple but quite profound barrier to impact right there, right? Some of the roadblocks that get in the way. Right. Any other questions? We've got 6 minutes to go, and certainly won't run right up till the hour if we don't have to. But last chance for any final questions or comments. Welcome comments as well. Well, Dion, I would like to give you the final opportunity. Have you got any other takeaway messages? Oh, Alison, you're jumping on. Have you got a question?
Hello, Alison.
You need to take yourself off mute.
Still on mute.
For it, and
there
then
we
I
go.
forgot. Sorry, I forgot this was on. So,
I'd just say have a go. Make use of those networks within your organizations, but also across them. There are really skilled people out there that can be really helpful. Don't be afraid to ask for that help. And make sure you acknowledge that help lots. Because there's very few outputs these days that are a single person. So don't pretend that they are. Yeah.
And actually, it's that whole notion of impact it truly is a team sport. It's so building your team and then making best use of it. Yeah. And that team involves a whole wide range of different people, eh? Yeah.
And for a good pun, make sure you have those impact players.
All right. Well, look, I want to say a huge thanks to you again, Dion. Truly, always so appreciative of people across the system sharing, gifting us this time, because it really is part of the team effort of us being able to really showcase and have more impact from all the cool research and science that's going on here. So thanks once again, Dion. And I'm also just reminding you all that next month, the iPEN webinar we're looking at impact pathways, but through policy. So we've got George Slim, who you may or may not be aware of, Hannah McKercher, who has developed a little policy template, which we linked to in our newsletter last month, and is also on our website, a little link and a summary, and Rebecca Hislop from Manaki Whenua. So they're going to be sharing their thoughts, advice, and experience about how you can sort of make progress down that pathway to impact. So hopefully we'll see you then. But otherwise, thanks all for coming online. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Any questions, keep in touch. If you want to come along to any of the training, get in touch. But otherwise, ka kite anō. Have a lovely one.